Welcome to my channel, Polymath. Did you know that behind this little black thing can be said to be the ultimate display of human craft civilization? It sounds amazing. Today, let's talk about memory. As long as you have ever bought a computer and mobile phone, you must have heard of the word RAM memory. But it may be difficult for us to imagine that this inconspicuous little thing turns out to be the most lucrative thing in the global semiconductor industry. Last year alone, the global just sold $150 billion US. Moreover, one of the most advanced memory manufacturing plants in the world was originally located in Taiwan. What is this memory used for, and why is it so profitable? And people often say that the memory is not enough and the memory is too much. What does that mean? Let's take a look at RAM memory and the story behind it today. To talk about memory, we must first talk about why memory is needed. Many people should have heard that the early computers were not only very slow, but also required a room the size of an entire room. One of the reasons for this is that computers at that time could only execute one program at a time, and every time the program was changed, the very troublesome what does this mean? Let's take a super simplified example. For example, I have a piece of information in my hand, and I want to add them first and then multiply them. But after the ancestor computers completed the addition, because no one told them how to do the multiplication, it couldn't continue. This required manual wiring and switching to the multiplication program before he could continue the calculation. Of course, this is very cumbersome and time-consuming, and the vacuum tubes used to store different programs take up a lot of space. Therefore, in 1945, a genius mathematician von Neumann proposed a von Neumann architecture, which has a revolutionary approach. Yes, store different programs in the same memory first, so that you don't have to manually change it all the time, just tell the computer which program to read now. By the way, until today, more than 70 years later, our mobile phones and laptops are still made with the von Neumann architecture. But here comes the question, what exactly is this key memory? Nowadays, in computers and mobile phones, when we say memory, it usually refers to DRAM. However, DRAM is actually only a member of the memory family, such as CD-ROM, hard disk, USB, etc., which are also a kind of memory. In the memory family, it can be mainly divided into two categories, volatile and non-volatile. In short, volatile refers to the memory whose data will disappear when power is turned off. Non-volatile refers to the data after power off. Memory that won't gone. Hey, wait, why do we need memory that goes out of power? Wouldn't it be nice if the data never disappeared? This is about how the computer works. The most critical role in making a computer work can be simplified into three parts: processor, CPU, RAM, and hard disk. You can imagine a restaurant where the CPU is the chef of the restaurant, responsible for computing and processing data. Hard disk is the storeroom and guest tables of the restaurant, responsible for storing data and programs. Every time the chef prepares a dish, he has to go to order food from the guests, then the storeroom to get the ingredients and cook, and after cooking, he has to send those dishes back to the hard disk. The efficiency of this restaurant will be very poor. Therefore, another RAM is needed at this time. As the middle helper, the RAM will prepare the orders and ingredients from the hard disk first, then the CPU chef can handle it very quickly. After the CPU has finished processing, the RAM is responsible for processing the data and sending it back to the hard disk. In this way, the CPU, RAM, and hard disk can all be used to the maximum efficiency. The operation of the entire restaurant will be much faster. That's because RAM processes different data each time and does not need long-term memory. The focus is on speed, so faster volatile memory is used. Because hard disks need to store data for a long time, speed is not the focus. So traditionally, the non-volatile memory that will be used slowly but the data will not disappear after power off is also mentioned by the way. From the above description, you can also know that when buying a computer and mobile phone, the performance of these three things must be matching with each other. A computer with only a large hard disk or a very powerful CPU may not make it run very fast. Well, after we know what RAM is used for, the next question we can ask is, how does RAM memorizing? You may have heard that there are only 0 and 1 in the computer world, so to make the computer have memory, you need something that can remember 0 and 1. In order to do this, humans have tried many different approaches. For example, the early memory mainly used vacuum tubes. The computer would judge whether it was 0 or 1 according to the positive and negative poles, but the vacuum tube took up a lot of space and was easy to burn out. Later, magnetic core memory appeared, which used the cable to pass through the magnetic ring according to whether it was magnetic or not. The magnetic state represents the memory of 0 or 1 at that time. It was even hand-woven by female workers. Don't look at it as rough. Even the computers that humans landed on the moon used memory with similar technology. And at the time, the moon landing computer had only 4 kilobytes of RAM. Well, fast forward to the 1960s, a revolutionary invention called metal oxide semiconductor appeared, which allowed the memory unit of memory to be reduced to a small chip, and the power consumption and performance were also greatly improved. How is this done? Taking the most familiar DRAM, modern memory mainly uses transistor plus capacitor to form a memory unit. How small is this memory unit? If we zoomed in on a chip to the size of a standard football field, you pulled a piece of grass from the field and cut that grass in half, and half, and half. Well, a transistor is about that big, bigger than a human cell. Still small, so there are more than 8 billion such memory units in just one gigabyte of DRAM. Going back and comparing, although the earliest computer that used vacuum tubes as memory took up the whole room and weighed more than 1,000 kilograms, its RAM was only 128 bytes. Today, an ordinary mobile phone with 4 gigabytes RAM has billions of times more RAM. Although human memory technology has developed amazingly in just a few decades, with the development of new technologies such as AI and 5G, human beings have an increasing demand for computing, which also requires faster and more powerful memory. How can this be done? There are two possible ways here. The first one is to increase the working speed and frequency of RAM. Using the example of the restaurant helper in front of us, it is to strengthen the working ability of the helper so that the amount of data they carry each time changes. More and faster, the so-called DDR2, 3, 4, and 5 refer to the generational progress of RAM in this regard. The second method is to increase the size of the RAM, that is, increase the number of helpers. This is easier to understand. It is equivalent to inserting more memory units into each memory chip. But this is easy to say. It can be said that it is difficult to explode on such a small chip to continue to plug more memory units. As long as there is a tiny bit of dust particles, or if the circuit is carved a little bit, the entire chip will fail. So the most advanced memory technology today is in a huge clean room, using exposure and development technology to apply light on the chip with extreme precision. It is no exaggeration to say that this kind of technology can be said to be the ultimate display of human craft civilization, which is why this humble memory can bring an amazing revenue every year. What's more interesting is that currently the world's most advanced DRAM is made in Taiwan. That's because our work often requires a lot of image processing, and many people in our team love to play games. They are not too unfamiliar with the terms RAM and memory, so before serious research, we also feel that, well, this is a very ordinary thing. I don't think there is anything too interesting. I didn't expect that. After digging carefully, I found that the story behind it is too cool. It's hard to imagine that the things we use every day have gone through so many difficult technologies, and it's only about 70 years from a computer with only a few hundred bytes of RAM to 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes for any mobile phone. It's really amazing. Of course, because the technology and story behind this are too complicated, we can only use a very simplified way to briefly introduce some fur, and some metaphors may not be completely accurate. If you are a related professional audience, you are also very welcome to add and share in the message. Finally, if you liked today's video, please share it and let more people know story of memory.